Alright guys, we finally starting the segments about photography. Don't get panicked, we're still going to be doing color grading, filmmaking and all that. I'm expanding my channel a little bit, and now we're going to be covering the photography aspects of it, retouching, Photoshop and stuff like that. So in today's episode we're going to be looking at one of the best post-processing program for raw files is Capture One. In today's episode, we're basically going to be looking at basic functionality of Capture One. It's one of the best programs to be used on set and to process raw pictures. It's not a replacement for Lightroom, just an alternative, but let's get started so you kind of can see the power of this program. Alright, so basically here is the interface of the Capture One. Looks a little bit different than Lightroom. Actually looks completely different, but don't get scared. It's actually very simple, and I'm gonna guide you how to use the program. So first thing we want to do, we want to import images. Now there's two types of importing. You can import them basically from one location into another location, kind of like a cache folder, or you can appoint the folder, and basically this Capture One will generate sort of a little bit cached thumbnails, so you have a little bit faster preview, which is exactly what I'm going to be doing right now. So I'm going to click import images. We're working with a catalog, okay, and I'm going to select choose folder. Okay, this is my working folder. Okay, let's do this album right over here, and we're going to import all. And basically it's gonna start importing, basically generating the little cache previews right over here on top. You can close this, or you can just move it away if this thing is, you know, bugging you, because usually it's somewhere in the middle. And basically it's calculating on your cache drive a little thumbnail previews. So we can scroll through pretty much everything already loaded, and let's start working. So it's very simple, very intuitive. By default, all your pictures arrange alphabetically or by numerical numbers from smallest to largest. And basically, once you click on one image, it's gonna load. And with the arrow keys, you can scrub through basically timeline of your work. So let's say I really like this picture and I want to memorize it for a future, or let's say you have the client sitting, you want to rate it. Very simple. We're gonna use num keys from 1 to 5, and basically once we click on it, it's gonna remember it. So look over here in the corner, we'll click 5 because I think it's a 5-star, and this one gets selected. The next picture, let's say next picture, I think it's 2 stars, it gets selected as well. And if we're gonna push these little arrows over here, sort, we can select by rating. And if I'm going to select rating, whatever we rated is going to appear at the top of our little catalog. So that's very straightforward. So let's say this is a picture that we want to work with. On the left hand side we have histogram, which is very typical for any kind of photo editing programs. Also we have layers. The Capture One is a layer type program, so we're working in the layers, kind of like After Effects, and we have actually very finesse control over here. Typically the background layer over here is the default, that's what you're going to be working, and over here we have exposure, contrast, basically the standard stuff you would expect from the program. Also we have high dynamic range, which is extremely powerful in Capture One. We can recover a lot of highlights information as well as a lot of shadows. And unlike, for example, like Lightroom, it looks very natural when you try to recover highlights. It doesn't look like cheesy HDR. That's what I like about this program. So we recovered a little bit of highlights. Now let's see, let me bring down a little bit of exposure. Maybe I'll increase a little bit of brightness. Okay, and basically right over here on top we have reset all adjustments. Now, if you're going to push and hold Alt and click on it, it's basically going to be on and off preview very quickly, on and off. That way we kind of can keep track of the adjustments, what we do. At the bottom, we have levels, RGB, and individually by channels. We also have curves, again, very same, kind of like Photoshop. We have clarity. If we're going to zoom in a little bit, we can see how clarity affects the picture, which in Capture One is actually very exceptional. I really love how this thing functions, but we're going to cover in depth a little bit more in a different tutorial. And also we have a vignette control, which is, you know, very simple. I personally don't like using vignettes in my pictures. I think they kind of look cheesy, but, you know, it depends on your style. Now, this is the exposure tab. Over here we have different tabs. If we're going to go to the color tab, we have few interesting tabs over here. And depending on your screen resolution, they might be kind of like this in the closed shape, so you have to open them. So first one, you have, again, histogram. Then you have base characteristics. And basically, it's a curve for your processing of the picture. If you want to get as much control, stick with linear. But again, it's for a different tutorial today, which is doing basically a general video about Capture One. We have white balance, very standard. We have normalize. Basically what normalize does, it's changing one color temperature into the other one. And you can specify in a normalize, you want to do just white balance or you want to also do exposure. So basically how it works, let's say, let's say I want the whole picture to be like her skin. So I'm gonna pick her skin as the color. We can see it got selected. And with the second one, I'm picking what I want general tone of this picture to be like skin. So if I'm gonna select white, which we have a lot of white over here, we can see it's going to change and become the same color like her skin. So we see how this thing operates. Very simple. A little bit confusing at first, but you know, don't be confused. It's not too bad. Very easy. Also, we have color balance, basic 3 wheels, shadows, midtones, highlights. You guys know this already. We have black and white tab. Okay, very cool. Can do black and white adjustments. And we have color editor. The color editor is very cool tool in this program. Basically, what color editor can do. For example, if we're going to go in the skin tone, okay, and pick her skin color, okay, we can click View Selected Color Range right over here. And basically, it's going to turn everything into black and white and only show the color that you try to select. In this case, it's her skin. Now, the coolest thing about it, if we're going to click on these 3 dots over here, we can create mask layer from the selection. So if I'm going to click that, we have a new layer appearing. Okay, let me uncheck that. We have a new layer appearing over here. And basically with this layer, I can only affect her skin and basically do adjustments, whatever I want based on the color, which is really cool. If I want to increase clarity, I can do it, and we can see I'm only working with her skin. So it's a very powerful tool. I highly recommend using it. Alright, let's get rid of that. Let's drop everything to neutral. So let's say I want to create a new node, how you probably would call it in DaVinci Resolve, or a new selection or a new layer depending on the programs you got used to. Basically push and hold plus over here, and we have a couple choices. New empty layer, new fill layer. Basically they're talking about mask. If we're going to click new empty layer, all adjustments you're going to try to do not going to work unless you're going to use a paintbrush and basically start painting. This red thing over here is your selection. So to demonstrate it better, here's my adjustments, and we're only affecting that. So let me get rid of this. Now, if we push and hold plus again, and if we're going to do filled layer, basically now we're working with entire picture. So as you can see, we're doing global adjustment. So that's very cool. Now, let's do another fill layer. And they finally added Luma Range, which is very helpful. Let's say we want to work on certain brightness of the picture, certain exposure. Let's say I only want to change highlights. So we have this little Luma Range over here. If we're going to bring this thing down, we can see that we little by little going into shadows. Okay, and this arrow over here, as well as in the shadows, basically feathering how much feather you want to introduce in your selection. Okay, so let's say I'm satisfied with whatever I picked. I click apply. And basically, if I'm going to go into color edit again, let's see, color balance, we have 3-wheel selection, and I can now change color of her hair. Again, it's very dramatic for tutorial purpose. And we can see if we're going to click Luma, we can see again that we can change the radius of the selection that we're doing for the adjustment. So very powerful tool. So these are the basics of Capture One. I'm going to be making very detailed tutorials following this one. This one just basic introduction. For anybody who wants to know how this program works, make sure to subscribe, guys. I'll be making more videos shortly. And from here, we're going to go into Capture One, Photoshop. Maybe we're even going to do a little bit of Premiere tutorials. So we have a lot of stuff coming up. And yeah, don't miss a thing. So I'll see you guys later. Take care.